Quick thought. We judge fast. Let's rethink. Here's a smarter way to see people. The flip we all need. We meet people every single day. We see what they do. We make up stories about it almost instantly. Our brains are meaning-making machines, and they work fast. We sort actions into simple boxes: good, bad, right, wrong, strong, weak. But here is the thing about those boxes. They are often too small for the truth. So many of the behaviors we judge are not what they seem on the surface. They wear the convincing mask of a virtue or a vice, but underneath that mask, they often hide the quiet, tender ache of pain, or the frantic pulse of fear. If we can find the courage to flip our perspective, we can begin to understand so much more. This simple flip is powerful. It creates a small moment of pause, wait, what? Feeling that can stop a harsh judgment in its tracks. That pause is where curiosity lives. It is the space where we can choose to lean in instead of turning away. This small shift in how we see things isn't just an intellectual exercise. It is a profound act of connection. It acknowledges the messy, complicated, and beautiful reality of being human. Let's look at our everyday stories, how our minds fill the gaps, fast. Before we dive into specific behaviors, we need to understand the human tendency to create narratives. We are wired for story. When something happens that we do not understand, especially if it causes us pain, our brain scrambles to find an explanation. It wants to fill in the blanks to make sense of the world and feel safe. The problem is, the first story we tell ourselves is often the simplest, not the truest. It is usually a story that casts us as the victim, the other person as the villain. This is not because we are bad people. It is a protective mechanism. It is easier to be angry at a cruel person than it is to sit with the discomfort of not knowing. Think about the last time someone did something that hurt you. Maybe a friend canceled plans at the last minute, a colleague took credit for your idea. What was the immediate story that popped into your head? It was likely something like, "They don't respect me. They are so selfish." These stories feel true in the moment because they validate our pain. They give us a target for our frustration. But these quick, easy narratives rarely capture the full picture. Ghosting looks different when fear drives it. Ghosting feels undeniably cruel. One moment, you are connecting with someone, texting, making plans, sharing parts of your life. The next, there is only silence. Your messages go unread. Your calls go unanswered. It is a sudden and complete disappearance that leaves you stranded in a sea of uncertainty and self-doubt. The story we immediately tell ourselves is that the person who ghosted is heartless, disrespectful, cowardly. We feel rejected and disposable, and it is natural to conclude that they intentionally inflicted this pain on us. We label them as cruel because their action caused us deep hurt. But if we dare to flip the script, we might see something else at play. For many people, ghosting is not a calculated act of malice. It is a primal response of a nervous system in distress. When faced with a potentially difficult or emotionally charged conversation, their brain can perceive it as a genuine threat. Fear of conflict, disappointing someone, feeling shame, fight, response, flight response, freeze response. In this state of high alert, the most accessible option is flight. They disappear, not to hurt you, but to escape their own overwhelming feelings of anxiety and fear. Think of a small child who is startled by a loud noise. They might cover their ears and hide under a table. The child is not trying to be rude or reject you. They are instinctively seeking safety. For some adults, the prospect of a confrontation feels just like that loud, scary noise. Overwhelm can mute people. Let's decode it. We live in a culture that has normalized ghosting. Our digital lives make it easy to disconnect. With the tap of a button, we can unfriend, block, simply stop responding. Social media pushes quick, decisive cuts. We are told to cut toxic people out, protect your energy at all costs. That well-intentioned advice can teach a damaging habit. It trains us to make leaving the default response and prevents learning, communication, and repair. It becomes a justification for flight. When overwhelmed, people tell themselves they're setting a boundary or removing toxicity. It reframes fear-based retreat as assertive choice. Over time, it becomes a well-worn neural pathway. The more someone ghosts, the easier it gets. It spreads. Dating apps, friendships, professional relationships. Disappearing replaces showing up and working through things. Neuroscience helps explain why. Brain imaging shows that for those with social anxiety or attachment trauma, social rejection regions can fire as intensely as physical pain regions, like the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. Anticipating a rejection conversation, their brain screams, "Danger!" Many who ghost feel immediate, profound relief. That relief reinforces disappearance as safety and calm. Guilt may come later, but the immediate reward is stopping overwhelming anxiety. This doesn't excuse ghosting or negate harm. The impact is real, but understanding it points to a more compassionate response. Instead of spiraling into self-blame, we can ground ourselves differently. Acknowledge the pain and see their silence as a signal of internal chaos. This lets us move forward with more clarity and less baggage, focusing on our own well-being instead of a story about someone else's cruelty. The concept of boundaries has become a cornerstone of modern self-help and therapy, and for good reason. Learning to say no, protecting your time and energy, defining what is and is not acceptable in a relationship. We rightly praise people for setting clear boundaries. It can be an act of profound courage and a necessary step toward building a sustainable, joyful life. But, like any powerful tool, the concept of boundaries can be misused. Not all behaviors labeled as setting a boundary come from grounded maturity. Sometimes a very firm, rigid boundary is not about health. It's about control. For someone deeply afraid of being hurt, abandoned, or engulfed, strict rules can feel like a lifeline. They use these rules to test the relationship. They want to see how much the other person will bend. They want to know if the connection is strong enough to withstand a hard demand. This isn't a conscious, manipulative game. It's an unconscious strategy to manage deep fear. By controlling the terms of engagement, they feel a sense of power that temporarily quiets their anxiety about being vulnerable. Healthy boundaries are typically flexible. They're like the membrane of a living cell, allowing a healthy exchange of give and take. They can adapt to different situations and different people. Rigid boundaries, on the other hand, are like a brick wall. They're absolute, unyielding. The popularization of therapy speak in everyday life has had many positive effects, but it also has a shadow side. Concepts like boundaries, narcissism, gaslighting have entered the mainstream stripped of clinical nuance. When boundaries, raksh, wisdom, becomes a viral catchphrase, people start to wield it like a blunt instrument instead of a delicate surgical tool. The rule becomes more important than the relationship. Focus shifts from connection to enforcing personal policy, leading to preemptive disconnection. The pattern often looks like this. Someone encounters a minor conflict or a moment of discomfort. Instead of leaning into the mess, they declare a boundary immediately. The declaration feels powerful and righteous, a clean fix for a messy problem. But it can block resilience and stop opportunities for repair. The boundary can shield a fragile ego or help someone avoid responsibility. It becomes a way to say, "I'm not willing to do the hard work of staying in this." Research backs this up. Couples with highest long-term satisfaction don't avoid conflict. They learn to repair ruptures. Rigid, non-negotiable boundaries at first sign of trouble often push intimacy away. They protect from short-term hurt, but may forfeit deep, resilient connection. That safe, moral high ground can become very lonely. When we meet someone operating from extreme rigidity, our society loves and celebrates the ideal of fierce independence. We praise the self-made person, the one who pulls themselves up by their bootstraps and does not need anyone's help. We see this as the ultimate sign of strength, resilience, character. And in many ways, independence is a virtue. It reflects competence, resourcefulness, the ability to stand on one's own 2 feet. But there is a shadow side to this ideal, a point where a virtue can curdle into a defense mechanism. For some people, a relentless refusal to accept help is not a sign of strength, but a profound fear of being weak or dependent. This fear of reliance often has deep roots, frequently tracing back to early life experiences. If a child's needs for care, comfort, support were met with inconsistency, neglect, criticism, they learn a powerful lesson. Needing others is dangerous. They learn that relying on someone else only leads to disappointment and hurt. To protect themselves, they build a fortress of self-sufficiency. This child grows into an adult who avoids asking for help at all costs. The mantra, "I don't need anyone," becomes a protective story, a shield that keeps them safe from the perceived risk of being let down again. This internal, fear-based independence is amplified by our broader culture. Hustle culture. The highlight reels of social media constantly bombard us with stories of individual success. The fiercely independent person often earns a great deal of admiration. They are seen as the strong one, the person who always has it together. People may look up to them and rely on them, but they rarely feel they can offer support in return. This creates a one-way street of care that can be incredibly isolating for the person at the top. While they may project an image of unbreakable strength, they are often carrying a heavy burden alone. Their refusal to be vulnerable and ask for help prevents them from experiencing the deep, reciprocal bonds that are essential for emotional well-being. They stand at the lonely summit of self-reliance. This pattern is not sustainable. The constant pressure to be self-sufficient is exhausting. It requires an enormous amount of energy to maintain the facade of having it all under control. This can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, physical health problems. The body keeps the score, and the stress of perpetual self-reliance takes its toll. The very thing that they believe is keeping them safe, their independence, is often the thing that is slowly breaking them down. They are caught in a paradox. They fear that needing others will make them weak, but their refusal to need others is what is truly weakening them over time. One of the most powerful findings in all of psychology comes from the Harvard study of adult development. After tracking hundreds of people for over 80 years, the researchers reached a clear conclusion. The single most important predictor of a long, healthy, happy life is the quality of one's relationships. It was not wealth. So, what do we do with this new way of looking at things? How do we put this understanding into practice in our messy, everyday lives? The first step is simple but not easy. We must learn to see behavior as a signal, not a sentence. A sentence is the quick, final judgment we make. He's a jerk. She's manipulative. They're just weak. A sentence closes the book and ends the story. A signal, on the other hand, is a piece of information. It points toward underlying feelings, needs, fears. A signal invites curiosity. It asks us to keep the book open and read a little further. When someone ghosts you, you can fully acknowledge the pain and anger you feel. Those feelings are real and deserve your attention. Once the initial storm has passed, imagine the fear that might be hiding behind their silence. You are not doing this for them. You are doing it for you. It's a way to calm your own story and prevent their actions from defining your worth. When someone sets a rigid, unyielding boundary, you can honor it while also gently wondering what they are so afraid of losing. This curiosity can soften your response and prevent a wall from going up on your side too. When you see a friend who insists on doing everything themselves, you can admire their courage while also creating small openings for connection. Share your own need for help, modeling the vulnerability you hope to see in them. This is not about being a therapist or trying to fix anyone. It's about practicing a more precise and effective form of care. We are navigating a world that moves at lightning speed, a world that rewards quick takes and definitive judgments. In this environment, it is easy and tempting to label actions as simply good, bad, strong, weak. But people are always more complex than the labels we assign to them. So many of the choices we see are not clear-cut moral statements. They are survival strategies. Born from a deep and often unconscious well of fear, pain-old, unhealed hurts. They are desperate attempts to feel safe in a world that often feels threatening. When we choose to flip our perspective, we are not condoning harmful actions or becoming naive pushovers. We are not letting go of our own boundaries or excusing the pain that has been caused. We are simply adding a layer of inquiry to our experience. We are pausing long enough to ask, what else might be true here? That single question is an act of profound courage. It is an invitation for a different kind of conversation, one that makes room for the messy, vulnerable truth of being human. It stops us from folding up a relationship and putting it away before we have explored every possibility for repair. There is a quiet power in this gentle shift. It will not erase all the pain from our interactions, but it can create the space where healing can begin.